So far, I had been all in for everything Tanares series related, and about a month ago, I had received all of my Tanares Adventure items, and now finally got a chance to start playing the game. Here's my first impression after solo gaming for several hours beyond the tutorial. Tanares Adventure is a 1-4 co-op player, massive campaign board game, taking place in an original high fantasy setting. Technically, this is a campaign expansion for its original game, Arena the Contest. However, this expansion is far more extensive than the original game from the campaign game perspective. If you are new to this, it's practically a standalone massive campaign miniature board game that are made up by two components, Arena the Contest and Tanares Adventure packages. This interpretation looks to be confirmed by upcoming Ultimate Tanares campaign, which combines two into a single box and calling Tanares Ultimate Edition box. The original game, Arena the Contest, was the first project by Brazilian indie company Drogali Games. Despite being its first campaign, the game was successfully funded by raising over $730,000 and supported by over 4,000 backers in 2018. The Arena was primarily developed as a player versus player miniature tactical combat game. As an extra, the game included approximately 10 hours of campaign mode. As a good surprise, the campaign mode was widely acclaimed by many players. As a second Kickstarter campaign project in 2020, Dragly Games has introduced Tanares Adventure. This is advertised as a massive campaign expansion to the Arena the Contest. The campaign raised nearly 1.7 million US dollars and almost 8,000 backers. The game is currently being delivered and many have received the items. As for myself, I've received everything but I'm missing one expansion box, which is on its way. Currently, the game has respectable 8.9 rating on Board Game Geeks with 259 ratings. Tanares Adventures promises over 100 hours of campaign. Now, let's take a look at my personal first impression. Tanares Adventure is a dungeon crawler game, so the combat system is the heart of the game, and it is indeed one of the major sales points of the game for me. The original Arena the Contest, inspired by D&D combat system, has been markedly evolved and adapted for massive campaign board game. In this system, players control 4 heroes and combat against villains. The combat takes place using miniatures and grid map. Each quest have their own unique grid map setup using various types of terrain elements. The grid-based system has its own strategical and tactical depth, including mechanics like mob, focus, reaction, and of course various terrain effects. When taking a hero's turn, the player chooses movement and prime action. Prime action can be second movement, but majority of times, we choose one of 6 attack cards. The damage is calculated based on the hit dice roll and attack card's effect. So if a target has defense value of 5, we need to roll 5 or above on our d20 roll for the attack to be hit. Once the attack is hit, all the effect listed on the attack card resolves. When a hit point of the character is reduced to 0, it is destroyed. In contrast to Arena, where heroes were able to take turns consecutively before villains start attacking, Tanares has a retaliation rule. This means if a villain who has not taken its own turn during this round and was a target of a hero's attack, it takes the next turn. In Tanares Adventures, villains do not have an AI deck, but instead, their favorite target is determined by a color. For instance, green villain's target is a hero with the highest number of mana cubes. Other options include the highest and lowest health points and the furthest. So villains' actions are predictable, and that adds a tactical and strategical element in the game. If you like to ponder and find an optimal sequence of actions, go for it. This game rewards you doing so. If you'd rather want to be surprised, spend as little time as possible and go with your instinct. Simple AI rule with various passive and on-hit effect will easily go beyond your expectation. For anyone who had played Arena, one of the main new additions to the combat system in Tanares Adventure is a skill pad. This system allows each hero to act during other heroes or Variance's turn. If you are a TCG player, this feels analogous to instant ability. Before each quest begins, each hero chooses which of the 4 skills that the hero can be used during the quest. During the combat, each hero may use one skill during a turn outside of its own. Each skill has a specific timing when they can be used, which can be as simple as any time during other hero's turn or villain's turn, or to more specifically, such as start of villain's turn. In order to use skills, one needs to pay its cost, which is represented by mana cubes. These are accrued by different means, such as pre-combat adventure, accompanying NPC's ability, when one of the villain is destroyed. This new game mechanics has 2 main benefits. One is during a multiplayer game, each player has a way to interact outside of their own turn, so it won't be you are just playing 1/4 of a game. The second benefit, perhaps more important, is this system adds another dimension to heroes' synergy and combo play. For example, I can tactically set up such that attacking a specific villain will trigger its retaliation, but during that villain's turn, before it deals damage to my hero, I can finish it off using one of hero's skill. The Tanares Adventures combat system's fundamental rule is fairly intuitive, yet the system is highly tactical. Variance in game refers to a degree of variation in gameplay when one plays the same game over and over. In a campaign board game, we want variance so the game do not feel repetitive. Tanares Adventures have multiple means of providing the play variance. First, the game has 8 combat roles, analogous to class system in other games. This means there are 8 different skill paths. Also, there are a handful of heroes to choose from in each combat role, with each having unique passive ability on attack cards. This combination provides a feel analogous to TCG, playing a different decks. As the game progresses, we will be replacing attack cards and opening up more skill to choose from. When going out for a quest, each hero is allowed to take one non-playable character. These NPC cards have certain effect to boost hero. There are also weapons and gears. All these elements level up, evolve over the time, so each heroes are customizable and kept fresh throughout the campaign. Furthermore, the game allows replacing a hero as the campaign progresses, so if one wants more drastic change, that is also an option. Even though there is no monster AI deck, and only 4 types of favorite target, the game has many different villains with varying on-hit effect that gives villain variance. The real variance in the gameplay, however, comes from the quest special rules. Developer claims every quest have a unique feel. This is achieved by having special rules to each quest. For example, Tutorial's very first quest has special rules where heroes are restricted for what they can do, such as they cannot use attack action cards. This is certainly built for purpose of tutorial so players can learn one rule at a time, but this illustrates how fundamental rule of the game can be altered amongst the quests. Although I am still in very early stage of the game, this degree of quest variation seems to continue throughout the campaign. What I like here is that they all seems to be keeping with the specific situation heroes are in within the campaign story. The fourth piece of variance comes from the dice roll, as in other adventure board games. The game rule uses d20 dice roll. Some may view this as too swingy. To mitigate the luck element, the game uses residual damage rule, which means missed attack will still deal certain amount of damage. The game also provides tactical ways to improve the luck on your favor, such as proper positioning of the heroes. Also, missed attack will give the hero mana cube, which again is used as a resource to use a skill. One of the main reasons why I enjoyed Arena the Contest and now enjoying Tanares Adventures is the game's difficulty level. I like to play game where I feel like I achieved the win. This means I do not want to have a lopsided win nor bad luck loss. The game feels epic when there are moments I feel like I'd lose and at the end I end up winning. Dragoli games seems to do this really well. Almost every game I played since the first game in Arena the Contest, including PvP match, and even tutorial to a certain extent, I have been feeling a close game, with one exception of Arena the Contest boss battle, which felt a little too easy. I have definitely had multiple occasions of consecutive bad luck rolls that felt like they could cost me the game. However, those games ended up balancing itself at the end, and created epic moment where my heroes barely standing at the end of the quest. The game even has a built-in thematic challenge mode for those who want to push themselves to hard mode. By achieving extra objectives, using harder rules, players can gain extra loot. The game's ability to adjust difficulty level to players' liking while in campaign is something I hope every other games in the future to follow. Besides the combat mode, the game has two other relatively distinct gameplay modes during the campaign, which are Adventure Mode and City Management Mode. Adventure Mode is essentially choose your own adventure book style gameplay. Rather than you just simply read a narrative and go straight into the quest, the game have you go through branching multiple choice narrative before each quest. Tanares also uses tabletop RPG-esque ability test system. Here we use hero's ability value to modify d20 roll result, and each event has its own threshold value for success. For instance, the imaginary situation using this system is something like you won't get into the thieves' hideout, but there is a lookout. Rather than making this encounter full quest, the system allows to create such as test your force with threshold of 10. Normally with d20, it's 50-50 chance. However, if your hero has high force stat like 6, suddenly you only need 4 over to succeed. In the same scenario, one can give an alternative option like, rather than fighting with a lookout, one can perhaps persuade them, in which case diplomacy tests may be performed. This system makes non-combat portion interactively immersive. Also, it is important to note that Tanares Adventures ties one mode to the other's mode really well. For instance, I was impressed with such simple thing as that I actually got to use attack card from combat mode during adventure gameplay. City phase is resource management mode of the game. Part of this is represented by mini deck building game. Thematically, we recruit NPC, add heroes in roster, build level up structures, and have your ally go exploit to get more resources so you can do the things just mentioned. Here we have a character deck, which is consisting non-playable character cards and hero cards that you own. Then each player draws 4 cards from the deck. You can then use drawn cards to pay required resource for the city phase tasks. This basically represents you assign each character members a specific task. Some may be good at one thing over the other. Once all players finish the character task assignment, we start to gather rewards. If we perform the exploration task, we get loot. If you use the characters to recruit another character, they are now added to our character deck. Each of the city structure has their own effect, such as getting rid of unwanted character from the character deck. We can also level up city structures, which allows us to obtain higher level weapons and armors, as well as attack cards. To me, playing massive campaign games are like reading books with playable element. So it does not matter how great combat system is, how much variance the game has, or how well the game is balanced. If I do not find the game's theme or world setting not fitting my taste, I can't play it. Tanares is a high fantasy genre. There are magic, dwarves, elves, dragons, and so on. I don't have a problem playing this game with my elementary school child. Originally, when I played Arena the Contest for the first time, I was a bit skeptical for their world setting. For example, the Molochian cars part of the lore, saying no war is allowed in Tanares world, felt a retrofit created story to just support Arena the Contest 4 versus 4 hero play. Whether this is true or not, the game's story has expanded tremendously. In fact, Tanares now has 5e rule-based RPG in development. This should be more than sufficient to be seen as a proof how extensive Tanares world is. Tanares Adventures narrative are easy to read and intriguing story, but from what I've seen, read, and watched, they are not as immersive as games like Eon Trespass or Oathsworn, which are often referred to as one of the best board game narratives. It is a bit hard to say if the narrative and Tanares feeling behind those two games are due to actual content versus the writing style. Upside of Tanares is that it's much easier to read, especially with fast track modes, so even non-native speakers with less English fluency have easier entry point to this game than the games like Aeon Trespass or Oathsworn. Another element of the game I think Tanares Adventures stands out is the game's flexibility to fit many players' need or play style. Although story is a core part of this campaign game, there are certainly those who prefer not reading text after text. For such people, Tanares Adventures have fast gameplay mode during adventure part of the game. This allows players to essentially skip choose your own adventure style part of the narrative play while keeping the overall game story coherent and allowing one to still play quests at full capacity. If you are the one who don't even want to read any story at all and rather just play individual quests, the game allows single quest play mode. Then there are people like myself who wants to play campaign board game solo. Tanares Adventure require 4 heroes to present on each quest, but controlling 4 heroes, though possible, by yourself could be seen as a bit too much to some. So Tanares Adventures provide simplified heroes for such situation. I played for 4 heroes during tutorials, quests, and now switched to 1 hero with 3 comrades. At one point, I may switch another hero back to 4 hero. Then for some, they may want to know story but do not want to read on, and may feel more immersed when story is read by others. With the upcoming campaign, Full Tailor app may be purchased. This is used in Gloomhaven series and other campaign board games. I personally feel much more immersed in the games when I can listen to pro reading the narrative for me. In these massive campaign games, what we call replay value is not necessarily a pros. After spending over 100 hours, do you really want to play the game again? Does that determine the value of the game? Especially if the game says you won't know everything until you play second or third times. For this regard, Tanares Adventures have 100 plus quests, while during any single campaign run, you will see only 22 of those. Also, the story certainly branches. For instance, in the very early game, you'd have a dichotomy of take the quest A or B. If you chose quest A, you lose quest B option forever during the campaign. So I won't know the other quest leading from quest B. Having said that, if one wants to just enjoy various quests, there is again the option to just play each quest as a one-shot. So that is the option once you finish the campaign for once. In the case of Tanares Adventure though, I think the true replay value is there, and that's coming from multiple different forms of other gameplay modes. This includes Original Arena of the Contest, player versus player, which has its own rule set that is simpler than the Tanares Adventures. I have played this mode a couple times with my child a couple years ago, and we certainly had a blast. The game also has boss vs boss battle mode, which I've never played myself, but is yet its own form of PvP that is different from hero versus hero PvP. There are other modes of play as well. Furthermore, I can confidently say that this is a platform rather than just a game, and the Dragoli games have shown its devotion with its track record. Since the Arena of the Contest, they have released own expansion boxes such as Legendary Hero Box to add more heroes to the game. They've added Dragon Collection Box to add more dragons and boss battles mode. Then Tanares Adventure, rather than making completely standalone campaign game, it is released as an expansion to the original Arena of the Contest. Most recently, during the Tanares RPG campaign, although it is its own entity, the team has also added several new miniature boxes for the RPG, and that came with board game play content. So even though one has to pay for new expansions, the original Arena of the Contest has been seeing continued support and expansion. This seems analogous to living collectible card games, releasing new expansions every so often to keep the game fresh while keeping original investment still relevant. With such an expansive world the team has created for Tanares, I have no doubt we will continue seeing more support in this series while keeping our investment replayable in the future, so long as the gaming community continue to support the game. Would I be continue playing the game or series forever aside? I really like the fact that I can think this is something I can potentially do in theory. Production quality of the game feels great. All cards feels to have great print qualities. I like the fact most of the game component has actual physical representation. In tabletop RPG, we typically just write down the items and gears we own on the character sheet. Here, we do have dedicated card representations, including even simple loot cards, which I've seen on some other board games used campaign log writing style approach. A few of my cube came with corner cracks, which I'm okay with, but I could see potentially it could bother some. Though I would not be surprised if you conduct Dragoli games, they may end up sending replacement. I purchased many optional add-ons for the game. Card sleeves are one of them. They fit tightly to each cards. These are not penny sleeve quality, and certainly provide protection to cards. They are relatively thick. One add-on I have purchased that I do not recommend to others is plastic tokens. They feel and look cheap. Here I had wished Dragoli games offered metal token as an optional add-on. One of the challenge with any massive campaigns type board game is physical space occupancy. This applies to both during and between game sessions. The first fact is Tanares series have many expansion add-on boxes beyond Arena of the Contest and Tanares Adventure boxes. If you purchase all add-ons, There are lots of contents, hence boxes. The developer tries to offer the way to combine a few boxes together, but we are still left with many boxes. This is about to change with the upcoming Ultimate Tanares Adventure campaign. This looks like the development team is offering 2-box storage option for all the contents. For those who wished standard version over miniature to save the space, or even cost, Tanares series for the first time will have this option as well. As far as in-game space occupancy goes, the game uses city and world phase map that is equivalent to the size of battle grid map. However, these phases are separate from the combat, and tracking of data here is represented by character deck, loot cards, and writing in campaign sheet. Also, the combat board setup changes between quests, so we will be clearing the board after each quest anyways. So it is definitely possible to play 2 modes on the same space one at a time. The third element of storage is organization for the data saving and ease of setting up next quest. At the moment, these require a bit more work. This is something I list as cons of the game, but upcoming Ultimate box specifically addressing this issue. This is a miniature-based board game, so the quality of minis are important to many of us. Tanares Adventure minis are PVC minis without requiring assembly. It is my understanding that there are many people who love to paint these minis, and some are to the point they can only play games after they finish painting. If you are that person, one warning here is that this game comes with lots of minis, as this is a dungeon crawler at its core. So playing each quest may require tons of hours spent before actual game. I cannot paint myself, so fortunately Tanares Adventures provided an option for pre-painted minis on larger miniatures. I think these are amazing quality and I am 100% satisfied. Other smaller minis are also great in quality. They are not at the level of Warhammer detail, but I like looking at them when I play game, and each time I pull out new villain, I am impressed by amount of details these mini has. However, this may be just my personal preference, but some of the colored mini appears to be less detailed compared to the others. Here, I had hoped developers went with uncolored mini, or perhaps pre-painted with primer type of color to accentuate details. Overall though, I am very satisfied with minis for Tanares Adventures. With a massive campaign game, I think this is almost inevitable. If the rule is kept too simple, it may result in lack of game's design space, and as a result, game may quickly become repetitive after several plays. However, the actual balance between rule complexity and design space expandability is a challenge I believe each developer has to decide. In Tanares Adventures, the fundamental game rule is intuitive, but it is certainly a level of massive campaign game. There are many combat effects that one needs to keep looking up, especially in early stage of gameplay. There are many minute aspects of the game that one would raise a question only after starting to actually play the game. Even though core rule is relatively easier to learn, Tanares uses quest-specific rule to keep each quest unique. Since they are one-shot rules, they can be forgotten and that can have significant impact in the quest difficulty. However, as soon as you start playing the game, you will quickly notice the developer has put lots of effort into alleviating rule complexity. First, the rulebook is well referenced and have many detailed examples. The team also created tutorial quests to allow players to learn as they play. They have also provided a quick starter play guide and official cheat sheets. However, the game currently has some organizational issue. The original Tanares Adventure required unnecessary amount of book swapping that interfered with the game flow and actually made the game feel unnecessarily confusing. Luckily, developer has been working on this and recently updated tutorial within the tabletop simulator. So I believe this issue will be officially fixed. Once that's sorted out, I think this game is not necessarily any more complicated than any other massive campaign games. Yet it is undoubtedly far more complicated than Arena the Contest. So if you are not ready for steep learning curve and constant rulebook lookup, massive campaign game may not be for you. Being a campaign game with 100 hours of gameplay, there are some upkeep to deal with. Fortunately, many elements of the game represented by a physical card like skill pad, attack cards, NPC character cards, quest cards. I think the upkeep in this game is reasonable for the scale of the game. Having said that, it can be improved if there were digital app as in other campaign games do. One of the best examples here may be Osborne Into the Deep Wood. The game's audio narrative and adventure mode choices are in a single app, and your choices are recorded automatically. So you can play multiple campaigns. At this point, Tanares Adventures do not have any digital app to allow upkeep game tracking. All high-quality massive campaign miniature adventure board games are expensive. From what I have seen, they usually range between a few $100s to even over $1,000 after adding all expansions. Tanares Adventure falls under this exact price point. Currently, the upcoming Tanares Adventure core pledge is listed as $189 US. If you go all in, it is listed as $649. If you add painted miniature options, it goes all the way up to $839. If you are budget or perhaps space conscious, Tanaris standard version for $129 seem compatible in price with a game like Gloomhaven. Overall amount of minis, quality of components, and number of hours you get to play, along with game's replay value, I think Tanaris Adventure is a great value. Especially, I believe this series will likely to see continued expansion in the future, hence the value of this game should continue to get better. I am all in for everything Tanaris rated so far, and I am happy with it. The game's rules are relatively simple for its scale and intuitive. 3 modes of gameplay during the campaign, including combat, adventure, and city building, are well balanced and each creating own fun experience. At its core, Tanaris Adventure is a dungeon crawler, and its combat system is the main sales point. While there is a luck element in the game to allow creation unpredictable, epic moment, if one is willing to and have time to ponder, the game system rewards skill over the luck. However, it does not mean you must solve puzzles every moment or the quest. You can still play with your intuition and the game still creates tense moments. Main shortcoming of the game is disorganized campaign book flow, but it is being fixed as we speak. Expanse-style high fantasy world setting with lots of background lores are exciting and for sure to be unveiled in the future with more expansions the game series. If you are intrigued by the game, I highly recommend you to try out Tabletop Simulator and see if this is something you like. Thanks for watching.